Hi there and welcome to the first video for our 27 tips to reduce stress and anxiety. And we're going to be using the 5 pillars of the metaphysical wellness system that I've created over the past 20 years. And the first pillar is mindset. And we're going to cover off on a few different videos to give you some simple tools and strategies on how to reduce stress and anxiety. But first of all, let's look at a definition of what anxiety really is. And we all experience it in different levels from mild to extreme. And I can tell you personally, I've experienced all different types of anxiety and they've been triggered by all different types of stresses in my life. But essentially, anxiety is an emotion of the future. It's worrying about something in the future that may or may not happen. And what we tend to do is create an image in our mind of an event that's coming up that mightn't go as well as we wished. And what that does is creates anxiety. We can also create a story about a certain event coming up, and we can also make stories about people's reactions and their behavior, and we create this story around what we are assuming is going to happen. And in turn, that creates anxiety. So straight away, a very simple tip and tool that you can use to help reduce anxiety is to swap out that image that you have that things aren't going to go well and swap in a successful completion. And I'll teach you different techniques on how to achieve that shortly. So our first tip in the mindset series today is all about the power of language, because essentially we create our life in language. Our words are our reality. What we think is what we believe, and that is what we conceive. So essentially, the saying goes, my perception is my projection. So my internal dialogue, if it's positive, the things in my life are possible. If my dialogue is internal dialogue, that is negative, things are not possible. And remember, we are human beings, not human doings. So what we're going to start to look at is, what is your way of being in the present moment? Essentially, you can create that in an instant, and you can take away the effects of anxiety by being in the present moment and taking that power and harnessing that power in the present moment into a positive experience. Now, it does take work. But you can and you do have the power to be able to change your way of being in that present moment instantly into a positive experience. Now, what you need to ask yourself is, do you have a story from your past, or do you have a story about something coming up in the future that is not serving you well? And if that's the case, then that's where you need to start to look at is the stories and the internal dialogue that you have going on that maybe aren't essentially giving you a positive reality. So that's our first tip, is working on your way of being. And remember that language is the magic to empower and also to disempower. So let's use the magic to empower. Stop assuming. Start asking. Guesswork never works. We're not mind readers. There's no way we're going to be able to assume and think that we know exactly what the other person is thinking and trying to get a grasp on being a step ahead. Assumption does not serve us when it comes to anxiety. Assumption and anxiety are like brother and sister. The more you assume, the more anxious you get because you don't have control. You're actually just guessing. You don't actually know what the other person is thinking. It's a story that you've made up that you think might be the answer to what's actually happening. And obviously at the moment, there's so much misinformation going on in regards to what's happening in the world. And so we start to assume that we might know the right thing, but the best course of action is to ask. Seek clarification. So for example, in an everyday situation, don't assume that you know what the other person is thinking, or you think you know why they're behaving that way. Often we can be way off. So the best thing you can do is engage in conversation, engage in some sort of formal conversation with that person and ask them the questions that give you the answers to reduce your anxiety. When you assume, it often leads to many misinterpretations of actually what is happening in that event, or a misinterpretation of what that person is actually thinking. If you want less conflict in your life, you want to have less conflict in your day-to-day, stop assuming and start asking. Mountains out of molehills. Everyone's heard that term. And one of the easiest and best ways to make your day, your week, your life easier, lighter, less stressful is not to make mountains out of molehills and not to stress about the details. It's amazing the effect that that can have on your day-to-day existence when you're not stressing about things that are out of your control and you're taking control of the things that you can make decisions about. And one of the quickest ways to identify, are you making a mountain out of a molehill, is to think to yourself, will this matter in 2 weeks? Will this matter in 2 months? Will this particular problem matter in 2 years? And if the answer is no, well, then you need to reassess why you're giving this so much attention, so much focus, why you're getting anxious, why you're getting stressed, when perhaps it really doesn't matter. So it's a really handy technique to have a look at something and just step back and be objective and look at it and think, is this really going to be an issue long term, or am I just making a mountain out of a molehill? The power of single tasking. The quickest way to do many things is to do one thing at a time. In today's society, there is an illusion that in order to be successful in life, you have to be a master multitasker. However, research reveals that this is actually setting you up for increased stress levels and anxiety, along with reduced productivity and feelings of accomplishment plus work-related dissatisfaction. The art of juggling multiple tasks simultaneously is now perceived as an essential element of our current working environment, as technological developments have greatly facilitated the need to multitask. Plus, then add into the mix the fact that the average attention span of a human is just 8 seconds. This constant bombardment of incoming notifications and interruptions serves nothing more than to distract and demotivate, and this increased media multitasking has been found to be associated with higher depression and social anxiety symptoms. Also, lower academic performance in college students and decreased ability to effectively filter irrelevant information. Mindfulness has sometimes been referred to as single tasking and can be considered the antithesis of multitasking. Many mindfulness practices require the participant to use a single focus and therefore promote single focused attention. I'm the first to admit that I used to have in excess of 30 tabs open in my internet browser at any one time. My work colleagues didn't know how I operated like that, and is a classic example of multitasking mayhem. Through my application of mindfulness attention to single tasking, I've been able to reduce it and gain renewed focus on the task at hand. Our brains function optimally when we apply single focused tasking. Now, this is one I can relate to my whole life: perfection and procrastination. And it's taken a lot of work for me to realize how that was affecting my life, my future, but more importantly, it was a huge source of anxiety for me. I didn't realize I was actually a perfectionist to the degree that I was. We all have differing levels of perfectionism. You know, you've got the extremes where you OCD and the things have got to be a certain way, but then there's other sides of perfection where you don't want to look bad, or you don't want to look stupid, or you don't want to look like you're not in control of the situation. Perfectionism comes in many different ways. So perfectionism will be quite paralyzing at times, And it can cause a lot of anxiety because you're trying to get it exactly perfectly right. And as they say, sometimes progress is better than perfection. So understanding, are there areas in your life that you really struggle with, but is it because you want it to be perfect, but is it because you're worried about what other people think? And once you gain awareness of, is that controlling your day-to-day behavior, you will gain back some power. So I urge you to have a look at, is there areas of your life that you really are worried about what other people think? And is your image and is your work and whatever it may be in that instance, are you trying to be perfect? And it's actually causing a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety, and it stresses you out. Now imagine it's so ironic, to be honest with you, so ironic that to create these video series on how to reduce stress and anxiety actually caused me anxiety because I wanted to do a great job. I wanted it to be perfect. So this is, something I've come to understand from a very young age, that I had to, be I was an only child. I had to be perfect for my parents and I had to be, prim and proper. And so I've identified that very early. Then on the flip side of that was procrastination. And because I wanted it to be perfect, then I would procrastinate because it wasn't. So then that would create anxiety as well. I'm sure some of you can relate. So it's very important to understand perfection and procrastination are the foundation to anxiety and stress. So if you need help with that, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you and give you some more strategies and tools on how to work through those two P's. But as far as procrastination goes, my biggest tip that I can give you straight away, right here, right now, is take action. So I don't know if you find this, but you procrastinate, and you just get worse and worse, and the anxiety builds up and your self-esteem drops down. But as soon as I make that decision and I take that first step, I start to take action, wow, there's no stopping me then. I get on a roll. So the best way to get out of anxiety from procrastination is take action. And then the final tip in our mindset pillar is a fairly basic one, but it really does work. It's decluttering. Decluttering your house, decluttering your bedroom, decluttering your office, decluttering your mind. It's really very powerful to have a spring clean, as they say, to clean things out and to make things have everything's in their place, to do a clean, make sure everything's clean, and to kind of minimize what you have within your space. And that is also a reflection of what's going on inside your mind. A cluttered mind is not a healthy mind. It does create anxiety because you feel like you're out of control. You feel like you're muddled and you don't quite know where you're going and what direction to take. So simplifying things, keeping your space, your energy, your mindset nice and simple is a really effective way to have control over your environment and your mindset beliefs. And in return for that organization and control, your anxiety will drop down. Well, there it is. I hope you've enjoyed the first of the 5 video series. This was mindset. I hope you've got some really practical tips out of there. Let me know if there's any questions that you have. Give me some feedback. Can you relate to anything? Is there anything you'd like to add? But yes, that was the conclusion of our first video series. Look out in 2 more days for another video series on emotions, one of my favorite subjects. So I look forward to speaking to you then.